We are live. Welcome to the Power of Lifting podcast, everybody. It's good to be back. Hunter's back in the saddle.
We're back.
And today we have a bit of a different episode than what we're used to. We typically do a lot of like motivational type stuff, shedding light on, how people do extraordinary things in both fitness and business and things like that. And that's not to say that you don't do extraordinary things. It's just, I guess this genre is a little bit less spoken about, I would say, in society in general, but certainly the topic of this podcast. Without further ado, Tyler, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me today. My name is Tylar Bell, and I'm actually here representing COBS. So Idaho COBS is Community Outreach Behaviour Services, and we are Idaho's anti-trafficking or anti-human trafficking, I should say, awareness entity here as far as the nonprofit situation goes.
Awesome. So I guess we'll get started by having you tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to start COBS, and also what in detail it is that COBS does.
Yeah, so COBS has been around now. We're going on 8.5 years. We were founded by Paula Barthelmess, which happens to be my mother. Oh. So she owned and operated a community mental health agency here in the Valley for several years. And what she had noticed, the reason she went this direction, is there seemed to be a common theme throughout all of her therapists as far as this deviant sexual behavior was coming up, right, throughout their sessions. But nobody could really put their finger on it, couldn't explain what and why this was happening. So she hired a company out of Orange County, California, to fly up here and actually do a training on human trafficking. And guess what? All of these cases seem to hit the markers and the flags of human trafficking. So at that point, she felt that it was her calling from God to actually start this nonprofit and work on saving the victims and survivors here for human trafficking, providing services for them. So she started that. She asked me to be a part of the board from the inception. Okay. And to be honest, I thought, hey, that doesn't happen here, but that'll look killer on my resume later. So I joined.
Yeah.
And I did. Unbeknownst to me, I was uneducated and just ignorant at the time to what is actually really happening right here in our backyard. So we've made it our mission now for, again, just over 8+ years to go out and do education and awareness to all kinds of different entities. And then we also provide all the services and aftercare for victims and survivors of human trafficking.
Okay. So let's start. We'll back up just a skosh. So if people, obviously we've had some conversations with you, so we're kind of privy to what this means. But describe to us what human trafficking is and what it typically looks like.
Okay, good question. So human trafficking, I'm going to separate these two right now because a lot of people here in the Treasure Valley or in Idaho specifically think of trafficking as labor trafficking. That you're brought in specifically to do a job that you're paid way less than you're worth. And this is not what we do. We do sex trafficking work here. So now, are we seeing those combined as of the last few years in Idaho? Absolutely. We're seeing a lot of double dipping in that regard, amongst some other things in drugs and weapons and other things we can get into later. But we specifically house and educate and take care of, provide services for the victims and survivors of human sex trafficking, which specifically, yep. So to meet the criteria for sex trafficking, you got to hit one of three components: force, fraud, or coercion. Meaning that you cannot be trafficked unless you hit one of these three components. And at that point, somebody else is gaining beneficially off of your sex work. So whether that's financially, through a trade, through work, through other subsidies.
Okay. So what does that typically look like out in the community?
Oh man, typically there's a lot of different things that it can look like or appear to look like. Unfortunately, in Idaho, we are 85% familial trafficking. And what that means is we are trafficked by our parents, our grandparents, aunts, uncles, significant others, husbands, wives, spouses, whatever. That is primarily the trafficking scenario here in Idaho.
Yeah, that's mind-blowing.
It really is. That's an insane percentage.
It's gigantic. I mean, you think about the people or the things that you hear about, the things you see on TV, that's not realistic, right? I mean, the abductions are only 9% nationally of all human trafficking. 9% is the very, very small number in the tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of numbers of reported cases of human trafficking in the country.
So what would be the other 15% then?
The other 15% fall into a whole array of different stuff and what that might look like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of these statistics that you've talked about with us in the past, and even those that you know given us today are pretty staggering. So, I guess give us a little bit more on, I guess, painting the picture of how COBS intervenes into sex trafficking specifically, and what your program looks like.
Okay, I'll give you the idea from our Human Trafficking Task Force, which we started about 2 years ago. So within the Idaho Trafficking Task Force, we have about 30 different law enforcement entities that come to the table. We are the NGO that heads that up, which means the non-governmental organization that we partner, or that they partner with, to provide training, education, awareness to not only law enforcement but to other entities throughout schools and college and business and things like that. So they are a massive referral source for COBS. I mean, they make first contact 90% of the time with our victims, whether that's a traffic stop, whether that's a domestic violence situation, or some other kind of call coming in from 911 or dispatch, right? So what that looks like is we get a phone call to our crisis team, and we have a crisis team that runs 24/7, 365. It's all volunteer, and it's a team about 5 to 8. Most of them are either therapists or social workers that are trained specifically in human trafficking. So what we'll do is we'll go out, we'll get a phone call, and one of our crisis team members will meet that specific law enforcement entity and agent wherever they're at on this stop. And we step in from there and we do some basic questioning, some interviewing, but completely separate and different from what law enforcement interviews look like. Right? Because they don't trust law enforcement. They don't trust anybody. So we have to show them that we are not law enforcement, that we are there to actually help, provide services, answer questions, feed them, and try and get them some kind of help if they're willing and ready to do that. From there, we can roll them into some programs that we have through advanced clinical trauma services, or we can actually refer them out to some other places for different services that they might need. One thing we haven't mentioned yet is we have the only 2 safe houses in Idaho. So if they fit and meet the criteria for our safe house, we have the option to then roll them into one of our safe houses there.
Awesome. Yeah, that's
Does so it sounds like there's no really forcing, obviously, because you don't want to do the same thing probably their traffickers are doing and forcing them to do something, but the choice is given to them for you to get the services. Do you find that there's a good percentage of people who are not ready, or they refuse your services for one reason or another?
Absolutely. There are tons that refuse to give up the life or the game in their situation at this time. Does that mean we stop working with them? Nope. We still provide services. They can be out working. We'll still provide services. We'll provide food. We'll provide help. And we're just there.
Right.
We meet them where they're at. And unfortunately, most of them are just not ready when we make first contact. I mean, we deal with probably 40 to 80 they're out working currently, and that number fluctuates a little bit. Sometimes it's over 100, sometimes it's down into the 30s. And we have several hundred that we know right now that we have a pulse on that are just not ready, or they have come into the house and they've gone back into the life. We're about the same statistics as domestic violence, where it's about an average of 7 times before they're actually ready to give up that lifestyle.
Okay.
wow.
Yeah.
7?
7.
So what is the criteria for people to come into the safe house?
There's actually quite a few bullet points that they have to meet.
Okay.
One would be they're ready, and you know that they're ready when they want to give up their cell phones. They want to give up their electronics, because that's one of the biggest things is there's no way to communicate or contact anyone outside of the home. When they come in and they turn over their 3, 4, 7 cell phones, you know they're ready. That is a gigantic
3, 4 to 7 cell phones.
All of our women have at least 2, 3, 4, and up to we've had one of our gals that had, I think, 15 phones is what she had at one time.
Oh my gosh.
So I guess explain to us a little bit about how that works. So you mentioned specifically, okay, this gal has 15 cell phones, but so how does it get to that? So somebody is actively a victim, and how does that typically start? And you can generalize. How does that typically start, and how does it progress to where they need, and why would they need 15 cell phones?
Great. Sorry, Tyler, right before you answer that.
And progress into where they end up eventually.
Okay.
But the phone thing is most of our women have kids.
Okay.
However, none of them actually have their kids. Either they're in state custody or they're with family. They've all been removed. No. So typically one phone is all of their personal contacts, all of their personal pictures of their kids, their family, that kind of thing. Okay. The other phones, they're all working phones, whether that's different pimps that they are affiliated with, because there are some that have multiple, or it's just one girl that has multiple phones. So a lot of them are track phones, right? You have so many minutes, and then it's burned up, and you use another one, and so on and so forth. So you can collect a lot of phones, iPads, and other devices.
Interesting. Okay.
So are they using these different phones so that people don't know their identity, or so that they're just living a separate life? Or so what's the advantage for them to using a track phone compared to just using their personal cell phone?
A lot of the times they are not able to be tracked, right? You still have to have credit checks to get cell phones. Right. I mean, they have nothing. They're handed to them by their pimps, so they don't purchase them. They don't buy them. And it's a way for them to not be tracked on where they're going, what they're doing, and how they're doing it, from anyone outside of their pimp specifically.
Gotcha. Okay. So how does this all get started? I think something that was very insightful that we have spoken about previously is when you talked about kind of the steps that some of these victims go through over time, and how, like, for example, how does somebody even get started into trafficking? You mentioned the family connections, things like that. I think it would be useful to get some examples of some of those things.
Yeah, there's tons of examples. One specifically with the familial trafficking is in Idaho, as we were talking a little bit earlier, the rent increase, the housing market increase has gone up exponentially compared to what you can make a decent living here in Idaho for Idaho natives. Right. So it gets cold here. It gets hot here. People still have to eat. What do they do? What do you do if you can't pay your rent and your landlord is kind of a scumbag, right? He may come up and say, okay, you can't live here. You haven't paid your rent. Oh, but I see you have a 13-year-old daughter. I see you have whatever. How about we exchange something for your rent? And that is pretty common.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that's pretty common and becoming more common now with, again, the increase in rent and the housing market here. So that's just one example. And that goes for family members as well. So we've had one gal, really, this drove home a very hard point for me a couple of years ago, when we had one gal that was in a life being sold by her family, and she had run away underage. And in Idaho, the police had to bring her back to her parents, right, who were then pimping her out. And when the police officer got to the door and said, Susie, try not to run away anymore, be safe, whatever. And she told him, that's easy for you to say. You don't have to give Grandpa a blowjob tonight before you go to bed.
Yikes.
Gee.
So that happens quite frequently. A lot of this familial stuff is also generational. We've had another gal come in her 20s to the safe house and say things like, oh, I didn't know that not everybody had to sleep with Uncle Kevin to pay the rent every month. That's not normal.
My God.
No, that's not normal.
Right.
Right.
They don't know the difference.
This is what has been conditioned over years and years and years and generationally. So,
Holy cow.
and that's part of the familial trafficking here in this area for that. Some other examples for different types of trafficking would be if you go to the mall, terrible place to let your teenage kid go to the mall, unsupervised by themselves, is there's people there watching for specific vulnerabilities. And I talked about this yesterday with a group of moms. One of the biggest reasons that is actually taking place right now is parental supervision. We don't have the parental supervision that a lot of us had when we grew up. Parents are working their butts off just to provide a place to live right now, right? So what do? They give their kid a cell phone. The cell phone's the devil. You can access way too much stuff on that, and parents don't check, they don't supervise. All they have that for is a lifeline to communicate occasionally, right? So you send your kid to the mall, they're unsupervised.
They think that they're safe if they have a cell phone so that they can get a hold of them no matter where they are, right?
Yep.
It's like a false safety blanket.
It's definitely a false safety net. That is for sure.
Yeah, right.
So you have your kid that goes to the mall, and you have people there watching. People who know how to pick out kids that are unsupervised.
Yep.
They follow them to stores. They do these things. They begin the grooming process, right? I mean, there's multiple ways to begin to groom your prey, air quotes. And that's one of the ways that they do that.
Yeah.
And then pretty soon they exchange phone numbers. They exchange Instagram or Facebook friendships, and then it's just downhill from there.
Yeah.
And we can talk for hours about this kinds of stuff and all the different experiences and ways that lead to that.
Yeah, it's crazy. I had a client whose daughter got mixed up with some basically old guy, and she was super young. Gosh, what was she doing? She's like online gaming.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
So online gaming's very big for this.
It's nuts. That just blew my mind.
What's crazy is like when I remember in elementary school, we're like going over computer safety and computer class and doing all that kind of stuff. And it was almost like, or like those online games that were coming out, like I don't know what it was called, RuneScape or something. And you have an online game, and then it was always a joke, like, like the boy makes a girl character in the game, and that's just like silly that we would do that. But then like the serious nature what actually could be happening at the time, it just wasn't even a thought.
Nope. And I can tell you all kinds of stories. So we do trafficking training in some junior highs and some high schools because we're seeing recruitment at school in junior high and high school. I mean, it's a huge...
From other students?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So when that gets into residential parties and residential things from their parents that have their kids recruit friends at school, they come home, they get them drunk, they get them high, but what they don't know is they've already sold those kids to a group of other adults to come in and have sex with them. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that's happened here locally in the last couple of years with that. And that's been a really big uptick in that since the lockdowns from all the COVID crap. With all the lockdowns, that's really promoted the residential parties.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is that because people just can't go out?
Correct.
Or, okay. And so they start having parties at home. That just blows my mind. So these adults are basically telling their kids, hey, bring your friends home. And then they're telling, other people or their buddies or whatever, hey, my kid's going to bring these teenage whatever kids over, and you can come have sex with them after we get them drunk or high or whatever.
Yep.
That is disgusting.
And what everyone always says is, how come those kids don't ever report it?
Right.
Why? Because it's either pictures or it's videotaped.
Right.
And what they're threatened with is, if you say something, I will release this to your friends, to your parents, and everyone will know. Well, what's the biggest deterrent for all of our kids that are teenage or any teenager? Yeah, right. Guilt and shame. You don't want the guilt and shame. You don't want people to know. You don't want your friends to know that you actually participate in this unwillingly.
Right.
You were forced into this.
Right.
it's the guilt and shame. So it keeps them quiet. It's the blackmail, guilt, and shame.
So do you get, does that repeatedly happen to people sometimes, or is it typically like a one and done with that type of a situation?
In that situation, it can be repeated because of the guilt and shame and the blackmail that goes along with that. And they'll continue to say, okay, now you're going to come back again, because if you don't, we'll release this.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But there's always consistent and constant recruitment going on. And I like to double back for the apps thing. So we do that, the trainings in the junior highs and high schools. And one of the craziest thing is, so Department of Homeland Security runs a task force nationally, right? They're in charge of that. It runs 365, 24/7, never stops. And the end of 2021 last year, they reported an over 500% increase in human trafficking cases, just in the United States. So it's growing. It's not slowing down. It's growing exponentially, actually. And they have a list of apps and things to watch for on your kids' phones and things like that, right? So I go and I do this little training with the high schools, and it is amazing at how many of those kids know apps today that didn't exist 2 days ago that are doing the exact same thing, that they've already formed into a way of hiding more stuff in a different app. Because Snapchat, everyone knows about Snapchat and how terrible that is. Right. Everyone knows about TikTok. What people don't know about TikTok is you can actually hack into the back of that and watch kids from their phones through their own cameras. A lot of people don't know that. So that's a big thing that we really try to educate on.
So even when people aren't on TikTok, or is it when they're specifically on TikTok, you can just hack into their phone?
Yep, you can hack on their phone if they have the TikTok app on their phone that it is actually open and going.
Okay, so if the TikTok app isn't open and going, then they can't.
From my understanding, that's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Still insane.
Yikes.
It's wild.
Oh, that is completely insane.
But then, we educate about, okay, everyone in here that has Instagram, Facebook, raise your hand. Every single person raise their hand, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, how many of you know every single person that you are friends with that you've actually seen in person or met in person on there?
Yeah.
Not a single person raised their hand ever.
Jose,
right?
Ever.
So what we run into is, you're talking about the gaming back in the day and creating a different avatar. You're having 40-year-old men that are posing, right, as a 15, 16, whatever the age-appropriate female is that they're communicating with. And pretty soon you build that rapport, you start messaging them, you have all these things, and then you ask questions. And let's face it, kids are stupid. They will give up information like
I'd say people
that.
in general too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
People in general are very gullible, I'd say.
Yep. So I do a 30-second drill every single class that we do a training in, and it's a 30-second drill. And I actually time it. So all the kids come in, and I pick out one kid in the crowd. And they're always there. Let me tell you that. They're always there. And you can pick out any of the kids. So I pick out one kid, and I start asking questions for 30 seconds. As many questions as I can get. And in the several dozen that we've done just in this last year, I have not had one kid not answer any of my questions. And the questions that I've asked, I can pinpoint and find that kid that next week, just like that. What do you drive? Where do you like to hang out? What days do you like to hang out there? What sports do you play after school? Do your parents ever go with you guys? All these things, and they just rattle off information like crazy. So, and that's in 30 seconds. I can find that kid anywhere in this valley, which is insane. Wow. So think about the grooming process when you're communicating via social media and you're grooming for months. And months.
Yeah. It's incredible.
You can patient. All kinds of information.
All these intruders are.
Well, they're very patient, and they are willing to put the time and energy into finding that out, because the average female will bring in $250,000 annually for one trafficker, and they don't have just one.
Jeez.
So it is a very large investment for them. Right? I mean, they're willing to do that, and they do. And there's so many terrible apps, and I could just rattle off a ton of them. The parents just have no idea.
Well, would you mind sharing a few, just so we can?
Yeah, so we all know. So Instagram's also really bad. So there's a lot of stuff you can do on Instagram. Facebook's still the #1 trafficking platform.
Oh, there you go.
More than all the other apps combined.
Oh wow, Facebook, huh?
Yep. Why? Because it has the most. It has the most subscribers.
Sure. Okay.
Right. and it's been around the longest, and it's still used and utilized for that. Snapchat, of course. Discord's a big one. Reddit.
I haven't even heard of Discord.
Yeah, so Discord, we've actually had a case here locally.
What does Discord do?
It's a communication app.
Okay.
Yep. I mean, most people don't really know that. They don't use a ton of that. That's the younger generation, probably the 8th, 7th, 8th, 9th graders that really have that right now. Some of the high schoolers have it.
Okay.
But it's another app that you can actually listen in 24/7 and backdoor into that. And it's pretty wild. We had a case here last year. Our 14-year-old girl who met another female, age appropriate, on Discord, began chatting and so on and so forth. Anyway, had backdoored and accessed the camera, the microphone 24/7, and convinced this gal that her parents were coming in and sexually assaulting her in the middle of the night. And this grooming process took months, to the point where she was going to run away with this other girl. And luckily, in the midst of that whole chaotic thing, it was a 38-year-old male. Is what it ended up being. Actually drove to her house, and the parents happened to be there to be able to stop that exchange.
God, thank God. So holy crap.
Crazy. Yeah. I mean, we had another gal, similar story. A gentleman drove, she didn't know. This age-appropriate female drove all the way from Ohio through the night to pick this 15-year-old girl up from here in the Treasure Valley. Actually succeeded in picking her up, started driving back, and had some kind of crazy episode, which he ended up getting so high he was sick and laying in the middle, sprawled out in the middle of the freeway. And a police officer happened to pull up behind them, ask questions. Obviously, you got a 15-year-old girl and this 40-year-old male, and things didn't add up. Well, she had had a missing persons case that had been opened, and anyway, so we were able to recover.
How does that happen, though? So you're a 15-year-old girl. You're supposed to meet up with this other 15, 16, whatever-year-old girl, and a 40-year-old dude shows up. That's not a red flag? Just wondering. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
what do you think it is that's like,
off.
Well, what do you think it is that allows? I know it's over months of time. It's very careful. But yeah, why psychologically would you?
So would these individuals have issues to begin with?
Yes, I'm glad you said that. So the majority of our victims have some kind of vulnerability. And there's a whole list of vulnerabilities that you could have that put you at a higher risk factor for being trafficked, right? I mean, homelessness, huge. Why? Again, because it's hot, it's cold here, you get hungry, so on and so forth. So homelessness is massive. You've got cognitive impairments, which are also very, very large. Why? Because you don't comprehend things. You don't see,
you don't pick up on
the danger. You can't understand some of the things and the nuances of body language, speech, threats, that kind of stuff. You've got the LGBTQ plus population, which is another gigantic vulnerability. Why? Because they're unwanted. Nobody likes them. Right?
Oh, sure. Just seeking that improvement.
It's seeking improvement, seeking love. Another one is family that is involved in the IDOC system or correctional facilities. Why? Because there's no parental supervision. They don't feel accepted or wanted. They're not part of something. And the list goes on and on and on. So, yes, most of them have some kind of vulnerability. And I'd say the largest one still, in my opinion, is lack of parental supervision. You're not there. You want to belong. You want a parent figure. You want something to be a part of. And somebody comes in and shows you love and affection, is there to begin with. You're all in. Right.
Okay.
Do you find this being far more prevalent at certain income levels?
Nope. This is one thing where there is no discrimination, whether that's age, race, religion, and socioeconomical standing. Zero.
Really?
It does not discriminate. Why? Because these men and women, they're literally just a commodity to our traffickers. They're not human beings. They're not people. They are a commodity.
Right.
That's it.
Where do you think it is on the trafficker's side that brings a human to treat another human as a commodity?
Oh, they're just evil.
Yeah. There's desensitization probably from a young age.
That would be a big one, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's nothing short of evilness, and I mean,
Right.
to be able to treat somebody else that way.
Yeah.
I just feel
is
like, that
pretty
would
wild.
also have to be a process in some sort of way. It's not like you wake up one morning and because it's not something you just decide. I don't think just decide to do, in the morning just to try it out.
I mean, we can take that a step further and talk about the porn industry, right?
Sure.
And everyone says, "Oh, are they connected or tied together?" Absolutely.
So let's dig into that a little bit, because like, so OnlyFans is big in this day and age. Like, we all did those like anonymous questions on Instagram a while back, which were quite entertaining.
They were entertaining.
And honestly, like, when you have things be anonymous, it really does bring out like the true colors in a lot of people. And obviously your answers are not anonymous to the questions, but people can ask things that may be fringe or whatever, right? So a lot of people asked, would you ever start an OnlyFans? Not just to me. I mean, I did get asked that, but which I feel is stupid, but regardless,
Sure, yeah.
there was a lot of people, especially in our industry, that were like, would you ever start an OnlyFans? Because a lot of what we do is like with people that compete in fitness competitions and things like that. Like, obviously they, their bodies are somewhat of their own work of art, right? So that's going to be a question that gets thrown around. So that's something that's, commonly asked, I would say, in our industry. And then it just goes down the rabbit hole from there, right? So how is that all intermingled?
So I can say right now that OnlyFans has some major lawsuits against them that hopefully go through for allowing some of this private information, private pictures, private video showings of underage girls specifically to be allowed and processed. And
So
pursued.
traffickers are probably using OnlyFans to get business, yeah?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's another way that they're actually pimping their women out.
Right,
Oh.
because
Yep.
they're charging subscriptions to...
Subscriptions, I mean, you can get on there and you get a picture of your feet for $50.
Right.
Right.
I mean, that's...
So on that note, what would you say to like the the normal Joe Schmo or Jane Doe or whatever, some gal that's like, well, my friend's selling feet pics for $50. I want to just sell pictures of my feet to make some money. Like, what's the deal with that?
I would tell you it doesn't stop there. And every single one of them says, I only planned on selling pictures of my feet. I never expected it would spiral out of control to this. Because it starts with your feet. And then it's, oh, let me see your legs. Okay, I'll pay you $100. Okay. And then pretty
It's
soon
just
they
a leg.
become
Right.
attached to the dollar amount that's
Right.
being thrown out there for what? A bikini? Oh, everyone sees me in a bikini when I go to the pool. That's no big deal. Okay. Well, then it goes another step further of, oh, just show me your breast.
Right.
Or whatever that might look like, right?
Right.
And then a lot of the times that's used as blackmail for the exact same reason. And then most of these women think, well, crap, now I've taken a step too far for that extra dollar amount, and now I am trapped, right?
Yeah.
So that's been a big part and portion of the OnlyFans specifically. We also have traffickers that are actually running all of those sites. So you might think it's Susie over here that's actually posting her own pictures. It's not. It never
it's
is.
somebody else.
It never
yeah.
is. So that's the other piece.
And then, I mean, the obvious thing about the porn industry is that these women are being basically forced to do whatever porn, and it's being sold by the traffickers for profit or whatever. Is there anything besides that that's a little bit less obvious?
Absolutely. So this goes back. So you have the two avenues in the porn. You have the one where everyone gets online and says like, oh, Pornhub, it's all free, and so everyone's just donating that or whatever. Wrong. Who's paying for all that? You have ad sponsors, right? So your content now is technically, you're being trafficked. It's being sold. Someone else is financially gaining off of your sex work. The other piece they don't see is there are women that are raped in those videos that are then posted. And there was actually a 13-year-old girl, this was recent, and you guys can look this up later, that she was raped and her video got onto Pornhub and they're fighting to have that removed. And it's actually footage of her rape.
Jeez.
So, I mean, that's pretty extreme, but this is what's happening. So you have girls that are going into...
Well, I know they had like a huge thing about the whole underage. Like that was in the news. I don't know if that was...
Yeah, there was an article written.
Was that OnlyFans or one of those porn sites?
Pornhub had one big article that got blown up, thankfully, over that specific thing.
Yeah, but like underage people. And
yeah,
stuff,
they had to go through and remove a ton of videos.
Is that basically that's like YouTube for porn, basically, right? Am I understanding that right? Like anybody can create an account and start monetizing it, or how does that work?
That's a great question. I think so.
Okay.
I don't know that.
Okay.
I just know that we've got a lot of survivors and victims with their stuff on there that didn't consent to that kind of thing.
Non-consensual.
Well, I just like hearing those articles and stuff too. Yes, the crime happened, and then it got shared to a friend, and then that friend maybe shared to another friend, and then that friend is the one who uploaded it.
Exactly.
It's like once it's out, it's out.
It's out.
And it could go anywhere. Like monetized or not, it could go anywhere.
Right.
Yep.
Wow.
Exactly. So that's one avenue for the porn industry. The other avenue hits on what you were asking earlier with how do these men, women, because there's just as many women traffickers as men. And our victims will tell you the women are just as brutal, if not more brutal, than the male pimps. So how do they get to that point? Okay, so how easy and accessible is porn? It's right there on your phone. It's literally walking, right? So you have all these kids that have access 24/7 right on their phone to any kind of porn.
Right.
The majority of the porn that they look up on, let's say Pornhub, for example, or whatever site that they're on, they are having the most extreme, wild, maladaptive sexual behavior content that they can see. So they think that becomes normal to them.
Right.
So as they get older and they start having sexual encounters with their partners in junior high school, early college, they're expecting this crazy
wild,
thing.
fabricated,
that's what it's supposed to be like.
Right.
So they're beating the crap out of these women. They're doing all these things, right? And they're just so desensitized to all of it that it then spirals out of control, and
unrealistic.
it could be that.
Well,
I mean, you have the glamorizing the pimping though. That's the other big
Yeah.
key thing, right? It's pimp your ride, it's pimp your house, it's pimp, and everything's fun and happy and exciting, and it's just so cool. You want to be a pimp, and we've got to quit doing that as a society. We've got to cut that crap off because it's ridiculous. It's glamorizing a lifestyle that is victimizing so many other people. And I say so many other people, we're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of people, if not millions. I mean, Polaris Project put out the numbers last year that 1 in 4 females will be sexually assaulted by the time they turn 18 at least one time.
Jeez.
Just think about that number. 1 in 4 will be sexually exploited / assaulted by the time they turn 18 years old, at least one time.
Wild.
And males are 1 in 6.
Gosh, that's really not a big difference.
Yeah, that's not.
So you average that out, 1 in 5. Think about the number of the people that live here in the Treasure Valley, 750,000 ish now.
Yeah.
1 in 5 will be sexually exploited by the time they turn
It's over
18.
100,000. Yeah, that's a lot.
Gigantic numbers.
Gigantic. So let's talk a little bit about something that to me is an obvious piece to this. Let's talk about drugs and the role. How big of a part does that play? Are there certain drugs that are more common? Like, what are they? Are they a gateway to human trafficking? I know you mentioned a little bit with the alcohol and the weed with the familial trafficking earlier. But are there other roles? Is meth a problem? Like, are people getting, are they getting them addicted to these substances, and that kind of creates, the crutch for these people to stay in that life? How is that all working?
Yeah, so there's a common cocktail it's a combo cocktail that they mix in a syringe and they shoot them up. It's almost across the board. So the only exception would be the cognitively impaired. Usually have zero substance abuse. Why? Because they're cognitively impaired. So they are easy to coerce and easy to manage. But all of the other females and males, they have a simple combo, and it's meth and heroin.
Oh wow!
So one
as a combo.
That is a
one to keep them awake,
Yep.
and one to keep them submissive, but still function in an awake brain.
Wow.
And that's pretty much the common theme across the board.
What a combo. I mean, can you name 2 harder drugs? Right.
And that's a fact. I mean, you give them one shot and you're hooked, right? I mean,
Right.
typically it's one and done and you're hooked.
Yeah.
So all the women that we get into our safe houses have to go through a medical detox because they're all addicted to the substance.
Right.
You know, and we have some that, like you said earlier, that don't want our services. They don't want to be a part of that is because they don't want to give up their drugs.
Sure.
Once they have to give their drugs up, they have to remember and see the faces of all the men that have raped them for several years.
Right.
And they don't want to do it. It's not worth it to them. And I mean, I can see how that works for them.
Might be able to sympathize with that a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. So this is really common, is what you're saying.
It's very common. Yep. It's
Meth and
almost
heroin.
every single situation. And then we also have the trifecta now, which the pimps now are. It used to be they would sell females or males, and then they would sell drugs, and then maybe very little would sell weapons. Now we're seeing a combo where almost every single female is selling drugs also. So the pimps are double dipping. So they're selling the female, and that female selling drugs to the buyer at the same time.
Right.
And then we've had several cases of weapons being thrown into the mix now also.
Just
So-
for fun.
It's like
Spice it
horrific,
up.
right?
Spice it up.
Multi-level marketing stuff.
Yeah.
I
It's-
mean,
it's
they're
pretty
not
wild.
dumb. It's a sales funnel all in one right there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild.
Right.
That is wild.
It's pretty scary. I mean, we're getting high school girls that are being sold, that are selling drugs and they're selling weapons through school, through high schools,
Through high schools.
through the high school,
Like they're taking the drugs and the weapons to the high school.
in their lockers.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
It's not
So-
super common, but it's happening.
Right.
Wow. That is just mind blowing. Mind blowing. So how do we help kind of 2 parts to this. How do we help prevent this in general? And also, how do we help you?
Generally, the best way to help prevent some of this stuff is have open conversations. I mean, training, education, awareness is huge. It's massive, right? Because most people don't, 1, believe it's happening here.
Right.
2, if they do believe it, they don't know to what scope it's happening. Guaranteed everyone that's listening to this podcast at least knows somebody that has been trafficked, has been sexually assaulted, or is being trafficked currently. Remember the numbers, 1 in 5.
That's nuts.
It's huge. So education, awareness.
That's crazy. It's literally like the stat, like you're never more than X amount of feet away from a spider, and you're like, yeah, right.
Right.
You know what I
Yep.
mean? That's you're
I
never
don't
more
see
than
it.
6
I've never
feet
seen
away.
it.
It's
right?
hidden in plain sight most of the time.
Right.
You have no idea.
Gosh,
Yeah.
that's just like.
It's so crazy to think about.
Yeah, 1 in 5. That's nuts.
Yep. So
That is
lots of education, lots of awareness, lots of conversations. So if anyone's listening and has connections to management at any company you work for, if you own a business, if you just want to come in and have a family discussion, we do free trafficking 101 trainings all the time. Everything we do is free. There's not a single paid position in this organization. This is our passion. This is what we live for. Make those arrangements. Find us on Idaho COBS and schedule a time to have a trafficking 101.
So I think something helpful before we get to how we can help you. Like I know this is going to be a huge question for most people, myself included, Hunter as well. We both have kids.
Right.
I think a lot of parents, their worst nightmare is to have their kids fall victim to something like this. So what are the best things that you can do as a parent to keep your kids away from situations like this?
Great question.
Great question. Yes. 1, be present. Know where your kids are. Know what they're doing. Know who they hang out with. If they have a phone or a tablet or an iPad, check it regularly. And if you want more answers on what apps to completely disregard and so on and so forth, we're happy to talk about that. Me personally as a parent with my own 14-year-old and 11-year-old, I'm a helicopter dad like crazy because it only takes once and that's it. So I know where they're at, what they're doing all times. People make fun of me or call me helicopter dad or all kinds of other crap. And I say, you're damn right.
Yeah.
I'm there.
Right.
Canopy is a fantastic app. It's actually what most of our DHS contacts used for their own families. It's a Canopy app you download on your kid's smartphone, and you can manage literally everything that they download. They can't download if you say no.
Right.
Pictures, it scans pictures that are being sent or sent to them, so they can't even download. It's pretty awesome. It's the best one on the market right now.
Canopy.
So that's Canopy. Yep, that's what I have on my kids' phones right now, and I love it. But that doesn't mean you still don't check their stuff. I check mine almost every day. Check their texts, check their notes, look for hidden apps, all that kind of stuff. And my kids are very well versed in trafficking, obviously. And but they're not exempt from being trafficked.
Yeah, still kids.
Wow.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, just especially from what you've said, I feel like just having an open relationship with your kids and having them trust you and, just be, upfront with you about things, right? Like not feeling judged for doing things like, I want my kids to feel like I'm there to help them,
Yep.
not only guide them, but like give them, advice, and not necessarily be a friend, but
Well, and
like,
if they
hey,
get in a situation.
yeah, like, hey, we don't want you to get taken advantage of, like, but I feel like kids like want to rebel for almost no reason. My kids aren't to that age yet, but your kids are.
Yes, they are. And they will. I mean, they're kids. They're going to make dumb decisions, and they're going to want to push the envelope as far as they can, and they're going to do those things. And I get it. I just try to put all the safety measures in place that I can, and I have the conversations. Guys, I'm not your friend. I'm your parent first. Then I'll be your friend.
Right.
But I'm here for your safety.
Exactly.
I love you. I care about you. Let's have open dialogue if you're getting ready to be at the age of going to homecoming dance coming up and all these things that
driving themselves places.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. So if you get to a situation, I'm your safety net. Like, call me. We'll make this happen. Right. So you have to build that rapport with them to some degree. And they're still not going to call every time. So that's why I don't care if you're 17 years old. I'm going through your phone. I pay for your cell phone. I will go through your text message. I will go through all your stuff. And luckily that app, you can't delete stuff. You can't accept stuff that the parents don't know because you get notified.
Oh, really?
So it's pretty fantastic.
That's awesome.
And it's it's an extra backup measure when they're being dummies.
Yeah.
Sure.
Do you think that kids have a tendency to, I guess, the pendulum swings equal and opposite fashion both ways? Do you think that like having so much control like that can lead to them making poorer decisions later in life just because they feel the need to rebel because they couldn't when they were younger? I just know that from like specific, say religious groups, like they end up getting out of the religion and then they start, drinking and doing drugs and stuff that they felt like they missed out on. Or do you think, how do you think that all plays into it?
I think that's very possible if you don't handle it correctly.
Right.
I think you have to have that open relationship. You can't do it rule from an iron fist.
Right.
You can't do that because then that's going to set up the rebellion later on. Well, my dad never let me do this, so now I'm going to go experience this. Versus, I love you, I care about you. This is why I'm putting this in here.
I fully agree with you there,
and you have to get on their level with them. It's not because I said so. It's because I love you and I want you to be safe and I want you to make smart decisions. And here's what can happen. Age appropriate dialogue on what can happen. That's what I've had with my kids, and not to scare them or scare tactic or anything else, but it's really just to make them aware of what's going on, aware of their surroundings at all times.
Yeah, right. Because ignorance is something too. You got to take into account if they don't know it's a possibility. Then they don't know it's a possibility.
I think a lot of this too just comes down to the fact that we need to be teaching not just our kids but people in general both self-awareness and situational awareness. Like I feel like that's lacking 100%. Very in large, like people, and especially like you mentioned cell phones, like you can walk down the street and not know anything that's going on around you, and that's a bit terrifying, right?
Oh, it is.
Like when I'm in a city that I don't know, when I'm in the gym, it's like, you know, or walk, you know, you're in your normal routine. I would argue that it's not necessarily vital to be, you know, because you know the people and it's not like you can't be on your phone when you're walking through the gym, right? But if you're walking through a new place, or like if you're just not paying attention to what's going on in your surroundings, I'm not saying that it happens, but I'm sure in some gyms, like, you should absolutely be watching who's taking pictures of you and who, you know, I'm sure that kind of stuff happens.
Happens every single day. We were just talking before this about that same thing. Walking down the street or walking through the grocery store, 99% of people have their head down looking at their phone.
Exactly.
You have no idea what's going on. So we had 2 cases here a couple of years ago, which pretty much was that. They were both at 2 different Walmarts. 2 friends that I know personally both called me instead of calling the cops first, whole other issue. We're actually at the store. One had a 4-year-old and one had a 5-year-old, both daughters, and 2 single females, and they were there shopping. 2 guys, one on each side of the aisle, actually mirrored her throughout the store, or both of them, for about an hour as they did their shopping. They had no shopping cart. They had nothing in their hands. Much older, in their 50s, 60s, and come to find out, they had parked their van right next to her car, so close that she had to go on the other side, which was another vehicle that you could easily be slipped and swept right through. But what was she doing? She was watching her phone, looking at her list. Both of them. They were both doing the exact same thing, had no idea what was going on around them. The cashier for one of them actually stopped the lady and said, "This doesn't feel right. Can you hang on here? I'm going to go get the security guard," because there were security guards at the 2 at that time, a couple years ago. And the security guard actually noticed these 2 gentlemen at the other store and noticed how they were following her and her daughter specifically. So it was the same guys
at both stores?
I don't know. We actually had some people go and try to get their footage and stuff for our task force, but we don't know for sure. But same descriptions, same van, same exact scenario. One was a Walmart in Garden City, and the other Walmart off 10 Mile. Crazy. And these were wild. 2 of my personal friends who actually called me, and I said, "Hang up, call 911, and I'll meet you over there." Right. So they just were not paying attention. No idea. And that could happen just like that.
Crazy.
You know, I mean, the abductions are only 9%, super small, but they happen.
But it's still there.
But it's a 9%. Legit concern.
That's still there. Yeah. So how can we help you?
Oh man, like I said, spread the word for education awareness. Let's train as many people as we can. That's a huge thing. We're community funded. We don't do any governmental funding because we can't operate within the restraints of what the government says. So we today moved in our 40th female and 4 kids into our 2 safe houses.
Oh wow, congrats.
Of those 44, only 2 would have met the criteria for the federal government's red tape.
So how much money does it take to keep your safe houses and everything afloat?
Oh shoot, we try to raise about $100,000 a year, and that's to pay for the 2 rents and food and utilities for the safe houses, and then some of the services. So it's, I mean, we run bare bones. Again, nobody makes a dime. We just do it. So putting on fundraisers would be awesome. We actually have our biggest fundraiser this Saturday. Oh, awesome. We're going to be hiking Table Rock from 8 to 3 to get them out and hike a mile in their shoes is what it's called. So make a pledge. I know you guys have done that, and that's awesome. So thank you. So if anybody wants to just show up and hike, we would love the support. It's a family-friendly event.
Remind us again, this is Saturday
the 10th, at from 8 till 3. We'll be hiking throughout the day all day.
Table Rock.
And Table Rock,
Awesome.
Alrighty.
So
we got a banner for you hanging up.
Sweet.
Yes, we do. Yeah. So if people listen to this and they want to donate to help the cause, how do they get directly to you?
So go to our website, idahocobs.org, and there's Venmo on there. There's PayPal on there. You can always write a check and send it to the address that's on there.
Awesome.
Whatever that looks like. Yeah.
Awesome. So we were able to do donate some of our enrollment fees for the month of May, I believe.
May,
Yeah, we ran all month long for those enrollment fees that we collected. We were able to write COBS a check for that, which we were very, grateful to be able to help out, and as little or as much as we possibly can. Just anything helps, I'm sure. Right?
Absolutely, man. That's awesome. Thank you guys so much. That helps a ton.
Absolutely.
And that's totally not to toot our horn. That's just saying that, we like to put our money where our mouth is, and it's definitely a cause that we believe strongly in, and so we like to do what we can to help support you guys. So
Thank you.
And then Tyler too, for those people who feel they need help, or they feel like they know someone who may be in that certain lifestyle or situation, what would you recommend people do?
Have them reach out, call the number that's on COBS. So we have a crisis number and a crisis. Everything is on our website, idahocobs.org, and reach out at any time, and we can get you connected in whatever resources you're in need of.
awesome.
Perfect.
Makes it pretty simple. So visit their website, reach out to these guys, whether you want to donate. Do you use volunteers if people don't have money?
We do.
Okay.
We use volunteers for lots of different activities and things. So we can always use volunteers.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Great.
So whether it's your money you want to donate, your time you want to donate, or if you know somebody that may need some help or in need of their services, visit their website. Tyler, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Every time we talk, I feel like you're, opening our eyes to more,
Yep.
it's quite frankly terrifying information, right? But super important to talk about. And like you said, just getting the information out there is so crucial. So hopefully we accomplish that with having you on here.
Yes, thank you, guys. I guess in one closing thing is this is definitely not to spread fear or panic.
Right.
It's definitely just to make you aware of the situation that's actually happening here. So again, self-awareness, that's
Yep.
where it's at. Don't
Yep.
live in fear, have faith, and do your thing.
Thanks a lot, Tyler. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, guys. We'll catch you later. See you next week.